around 40 different organizations, ranging from faith groups to campaign organizations to charities, who seek to bring about a reduction in government spending on military purposes and see that money redistributed for socially productive means. This is an important day, and yesterday as well, obviously, to remember not only the horror of war, but those who gave their lives in war as soldiers, as combatants, and those who had no choice. I was having a conversation just before this meeting with my 5-year-old son, who's been learning all about Poppy Day and related activities at his primary school. And as we were coming down the stairs from his bath this evening, he said, "Oh, Daddy, people have a choice as to whether they die in war." And I had to explain to him that although some people have the choice of becoming soldiers, not everyone has the choice of whether they die in war. And that's something that we see very clearly on our TV screens today. And one of my key acts of remembrance this weekend was to be in London yesterday with at least 1 million other people marching to call for a ceasefire and an end to the horror that we're seeing unraveling in Gaza today. And I think it's important to say that I believe we honor those who died before us in wars by seeking to limit the numbers who die in wars until such a time as we can bring that number down to zero. So I've been asked to speak today a bit about turning swords into plowshares. So I thought I would focus mainly on the size of the swords around the world, and then I'd give some ideas and perhaps plant some seeds in our thoughts and in our minds about what the plowshares could look like given the size of the swords. In 2022, the last year that we have figures for, global military spending was approximately 1.86 trillion pounds. I think that's 1,860 billion pounds. To give some kind of scale of comparison, the entire worth of the UK economy last year was thought to be just over 2 trillion pounds. So imagine almost 90% of every pound that is in the UK economy being spent on the military. That is the global picture. Two conflicts today that I'm sure we're all very familiar with. Russia is thought to be spending up to $1 billion a day on its current war in Ukraine. And Israel is forecasting that its current war in Gaza will cost around $50 billion. That's just on the military spending, on the kind of hardware, the weapons, the bombs, etc., the planes, the missiles. Israel is also losing £600 million a week from its economy because so many people are absent from work, because they've been called up as reservists, or they've decided to leave the country or move elsewhere in the country because of the conflict. There are obviously numerous other conflicts going on around the world where this money is being spent. At countries who hold nuclear weapons, including the UK, America, Russia, China, France, are spending more money on their nuclear weapons. They're upgrading them. They're getting more of them. Britain is set to have 44% more nuclear weapons in a few years than it had in 2020, thanks to the government lifting a cap on the number of warheads. And UK military spending in the past year went up by £24 billion to a total of around £235 billion a year on military spending. To put that into context of turning swords into plowshares, the UK is set to spend around 27.7 billion over the next 5 years tackling its carbon emissions, seeking to bring down those carbon emissions. We have a kind of ongoing cartoon that we're working on at the Global Campaign for Military Spending. I'm sure we're all familiar with the phrase, the magic money tree. There is no magic money tree. Well, it seems to me that a teacher, a doctor, a nurse, a fireman, a policeman goes and shakes the magic money tree and maybe a few pence falls out. The military go and shake the magic money tree, and they're absolutely drowning in £50 notes, and they can't be given enough money quickly enough. This is the way that the world has worked for a long time, the military industrial complex that FDR, the former American president, spoke about. And we see it with arms manufacturers sponsoring events in Parliament, at party conferences, and so on. It doesn't have to be like this. There is another way. We can turn our swords into plowshares. We can tackle climate change. We can bring and deliver climate justice to those around the world who are already feeling the effects of climate change. And we can put in mitigation measures to limit the effects of climate change and move towards net zero much quicker than we are doing with the billions that are instead currently being spent on war. We can move towards a system of genuine security, where everyone around the world, no matter where they live, no matter the size of their government's military, has enough food, has access to healthcare, has somewhere to live, has clothes, and has basic human dignity. I am a very strong subscriber to the maxim and the saying that no one has peace until everyone has peace. No one is free until everyone has free. I want to see a world where there is genuine security rather than the security based on the size of our weapons and the number of armed forces that we have. I believe others are going to share some more thoughts about how we can bring this about, but I would urge everyone here today to write to your elected representatives. In the UK, write to your councillors and your MPs. If you're elsewhere in the world, write to your representatives there. Bring to their attention the amounts that are being spent on military spending, and you can find that on the GCOM's website, and ask them to join us in working to bring this number down and to turn swords into plowshares so that the children of tomorrow can have a more peaceful future. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Russell. So it's my pleasure now to introduce John Heathershaw, who teaches politics at Exeter University. He's going to speak on realism and hope. He has a book coming out, Security After Christendom, Global Politics and Political Theology for Apocalyptic Times, and I'm down to get a copy of it. John, over to you.
Thank you, Andrew. I'm going to speak in terms which are, yes, apocalyptic, but I hope also hopeful. So in an address in 1948 to the newly inaugurated World Council of Churches, the Professor of International Relations from the London School of Economics, Martin White, warned of intellectual and moral poverty in the pursuit of politics, which was caused by, first, the intellectual prejudice imposed by the sovereign state, and secondly, the belief in progress. In intellectual terms, White was something called a Christian realist, reminded of White's comments, when we remember war, therefore, we must do so with both theologically infused hope and moral and political realism. So first, the moral and political realism. On this day, we remember. So let's remember that most wars are civil wars over the state. Occasionally, they're between states over security dilemmas caused by the use of force and the threat of force by states. That means that those governments that claim to protect us are in fact endangering us. Most casualties are civilian, not military. Few wars end in decisive victory for one side, a clean solution, and even fewer of them in a negotiated settlement, which leads to an extended period of peace. Around half of wars recur within a generation. UN peacekeepers are only effective in highly limited circumstances, and their deployments often create abuses, especially against women. Okay, so time for a little bit of hope. So second, some theologically infused hope. We also remember today that according to Erica Chenoweth and Maria Stephan in their 2011 book, Why Civil Resistance Works, when we look at nonviolent resistance movements, and if we take a big data set of all nonviolent resistance movements that they created between 1900 and 2006, we find that nonviolent resistance is more than twice as likely to achieve success in its aims than violent insurgencies and campaigns. They find that non-violence does not require violence to make it work. It is a force more powerful than violence, in the name of the famous book from a generation ago. Non-violence works as a form of resistance to imperial occupation, so it reduces injustice, but it's much less effective at creating a new political order through things like secession. Research also indicates that various forms of unarmed civilian protection do work both in the immediate sense of reducing violence and in the longer term sense of transforming the local conditions and making them more just. So for me, these things indicate that our times are hopefully apocalyptic. That is, that there is disorder, but space and scale matter. Small scale movements of non-violent communities are effective at defeating violence and carving out space for justice. They're not effective at transforming governments into beautiful democracies or achieving progress on a global scale, which is sort of rapid and transformative. But in global and historical terms, we know that violence is increasing, as many political theologians anticipate. Just war in these contexts is a myth which had some value when it was a plausible ethical framework to prevent and limit military action. But unfortunately today, it has become a legitimating framework to justify civilian casualties as both legal and moral. And we see those arguments being used again with respect to the terrible bombing and military action in Gaza today. So there's no hope in the supposedly just wars of government. They're neither right nor do they succeed in their own terms. But there is hope in non-violent direct action, which points us to the future, to the coming of a new heaven and a new earth. Thank you.
Thank you so much, John. So I think Karen is going to lead us in this singing. If you mute yourself, you can join in. Just follow Karen.
Thank you, Andrew. Lord, make us instruments of your peace. Where there is hatred, let your love increase. Lord, make us instruments of your peace. Walls of pride and prejudice shall cease when we are your instruments of peace. Where there is hatred, we will sow your love. Where there is injury, we will never judge. Where there is striving, we will speak your peace to the people crying for relief. We will be instruments of peace. Lord, make us instruments of your peace. Where there is hatred, let your love increase. Lord, make us instruments of your peace. Walls of pride and prejudice shall cease when we are your instruments of peace. Where there is blindness, we will pray for sight. Where there is darkness, we will shine your light. Where there is sadness, we will bear their grief. To the millions crying for relief, we will be instruments of peace. Lord, make us instruments of your peace. Where there is hatred, let your love increase. Lord, make us instruments of your peace. Walls of pride and prejudice shall cease. When you're instruments of peace.
Thank you, Karen, for singing a song that was written by Francis of Assisi, who came from turbulent times, was in fact a soldier twice, and then turned the corner in a new direction. Richard Johnson is chair of the Leicester CND, a wonderful human being, wonderful to work with. And he was with a number of people in Leicester laying white poppy wreaths this morning. So Richard, looking back, hoping forward, over to you. You may be muted, Richard.
Okay, let's start again. I'll just start my stopwatch as well. I'm fascinated by remembrance. It's partly because I'm a historian and so interested in past and present and future. It's partly I'm interested in culture. So I'm interested in the cultural form. What difference does it make? What does it do in the world? And partly because I'm a peace activist. And in its traditional, archaic, I think, forms, including, of course, the red poppy, it's a potent mix of elements, a lot of ambiguities and contradictions, I think. It's got nationalism in there in quite a conservative form, masculinity, because it's mainly men that we're talking about, and a certain undercurrent, which I find interesting, which is grief, sadness, death, genuine grieving. A lot of that happens in the families who come to remembrance ceremonies, at least the little local ones like Leicester's. There are lots of little family groups, you know, and it's family members that they're grieving. For 3 years now, a coalition of peace movements in Leicester have been intervening in the event in different ways. I think our major achievement was to get white poppies put down officially on the Arch of Remembrance, which is like the cenotaph in London, as fully accepted practice. And we're gradually increasing the groups that put down white poppies. So the white poppies round the Arch of Remembrance are gradually increasing. We had difficulty in getting fully official, but we are pushing away, getting our place in the official ceremony. So, you know, we're there, legit and everything. And that goes along with a general strategy of CND and peace movements in Leicester, which is to work through local institutions. So through the City Council, for example, we've got agreement to support the UN Treaty Against Nuclear Weapons. The city now supports that. But, however, I still find it really difficult going to a commemoration ceremony. I have to be honest. I don't find it an easy experience. I find it troubling. And I'll illustrate this by just one example. And this is a hymn, which is a conservative nationalist hymn, in my opinion, called I Vow to Thee, My Country. But it's a very good example also of ambiguities and contradictions. Now, I like singing, you know, I love to be able to sing this. And I love Gustav Holst's music, which is great. But I find the words of the first verse of this poem stick in my spirit, really. In fact, I find them kind of gruesome, repulsive. And all the time through my experience of this particular one, this year, I've been thinking of Gaza, as I know so many of us have. I'd have been on the demonstration if I'd been younger. And I've also been asking myself the question all the time, does this ceremony culturally serve peace or does it serve war? Are we in a warlike activity or are we in a peaceful activity? It's not clear to me. Well, the poet vows his love and his everything to his country. He asks no questions about this love. It's not unquestionable. It's unquestionable love. And this is a bit I really hate. And it's a love that lays upon the altar the dearest and the best. I think of Gaza, mothers, families, laying upon the altar. It's gruesome. In terms of the reality of war, that is gruesome. And of course, songs like this construct identities, an unreflective view of the nation, therefore a unthinking loyalty to the nation as a kind of super identity, cancelling all other antagonisms, class, race, gender. I think the idea of sacrifice goes along with a very English version of sacrifice, which is making do. There's an awful lot of making do in our citizenry. It's not the heroic sacrifice of war, but it is a sacrifice because you're giving up your best hopes. You're making do. And of course, it's a very selective tradition, and the selection we're all very aware of when we wear white poppies is the exclusion of citizens. And as we've heard, that is an impossible modern exclusion. You cannot exclude citizens when you start talking about war. You cannot. It's archaic to exclude citizens. It's grievous, you know, in the light of, well, you know, all the conflicts that we've fought against, that we've campaigned against. And it's, by the way, the same selective tradition that underpins conservative nationalism as a political creed. This is the creed of Brexit. This is the creed of Boris Johnson. This is the same nationalism with its same exclusions, its same privileging, okay, the same cultural formation. So why might this matter? It's just old-fashioned stuff. Nobody, perhaps particularly younger people, maybe don't believe it. But I think they do. There are a lot of young cadets there. And I think it's this sort of version of the nation is still there in the older generations very strongly, particularly working class people, actually, in my experience. It matters because when we construct the past, we also construct the future. It's familiar now to historians that the past is always about the future. There's always a past-present relation. We always rewrite our history in the light of what we're thinking about, what's important today. That's familiar. Not so familiar that we construct the future. But just think for a moment about what's happening in Israel-Palestine and how the memory of the Holocaust and all those European pogroms shapes the Israeli governments, the current Israeli governments, but a lot of Israeli people, perhaps most Israeli people, responds to Hamas's atrocity. It's that shapes that response. It makes it fierce, angry, frightened, warlike, destructive. And think on the other side that the memory of the Akbar, the great displacement, and how that forms terrorism indeed, this continuing humiliation. Why would young men not get angry about that? Why would they not want to kill? So the past haunts that conflict, really haunts it. Of course, its material consequences too, in terms of land and water and all that, and where you can live or where you can't live. So, you know, history isn't just about the past. It's not dead and gone. It's there. It's with us, and we rewrite it and we rethink it. And therefore, when we do that, we think about the future, and it goes the other way too. When I discover interesting things historically, it makes me think things about the future. And we've got some wonderful philosophers who said these things. Ernest Bloch, my favorite Marxist philosopher, one of them, puts it like this: we find in history as yet unvoiced, undischarged elements in the past. Undischarged elements, they haven't quite gone off yet. Will they go on soon? Sorry about the explosion. And then Paul Ricoeur, the Christian philosopher, says we find arrows of futurity that have not yet been fired. And I think of Atlantic slavery and how those Christian abolitionists first realized that Black people and white people were equal, they were human. And yet it took all that time to recover that, to recover it and live it really properly in civil rights and in Black Lives Matter. So that we're beginning to get real reparation, real repair, beginning, still only beginning. And we can find similar struggles, similar patterns in other struggles like democracy and the vindication of women. So in this way, we produce our own stories too. The White Poppy is a very good example of peace stories. My last point, sorry, I may have gone on a little bit too long, is we can find, Bloch says, we can find these positive stories in surprising places. And the second verse of I vow to my country, vow to me my country is an example. It starts, but there's another country I heard of long ago. And it ends, and her, notice the country's become feminine, and her ways are ways of gentleness, and all her paths are peace. I'm sure the poet thought of heaven, thought of literally a spiritual heaven, a spiritual place. But we can read that, understand that as a possible future earth, as a possible future earth. Moments of it to begin with, but a movement's essential to our collective survival. So this verse 2, you see, I can really sing.
Thank you so much, Richard. We now come to the Jain tradition. The Jain, if I could make an oversimplistic comparison, the Jains are the Quakers of India, except they're 2,100 years older than the Quakers. And we're very blessed to have again Smita, who's a really good working partner with the coalition, to speak something about that. So Smita, over to you.
Thank you very much, Andrew. Richard said no good evening, so namaste. And a warm hello from a very warm, lit up Leicester today because it's Diwali. The celebrations are going on Mountain Road, and you might even hear some fireworks as we speak, because there's a lot of that happening too. Let me say that Andrew's really come up with a good topic in terms of divided it in two parts, looking back to learn and hoping forward for peace. So having said that, it's Diwali, Festival of Lights, and Divinity as well, happens to coincide this year with both this Remembrance Sunday and Armistice Day. And of course, we've gathered today to mark the alternative Remembrance Sunday. So for over centuries, we have known that innocent lives are lost in fights and wars. We salute and honor the ones who have given their life for us to enjoy the freedom and independence. Sadly, though, currently some places are still experiencing and not really having the freedom and independence that we are all sharing and enjoying and witnessing. Places like Gaza, as has been mentioned, Ukraine as well. It's beyond belief what is happening. And to help us understand, let me just share that there is hope and it's possible, because we know that Mahatma Gandhi, the father of the Indian nation, happened to gain India's independence from ahimsa, a cornerstone supreme principle in the Jain tradition. Lord Mahavira, it's a very auspicious day today, by the way, because it's Lord Mahavira's main day, and why we celebrate Diwali is because he attained his nirvana, salvation, moksha, liberation, interchangeable words. So today, tonight as well, we have an all-night mantra, and to really, but what he taught us, what he gave us, is one of the key principles, and I can't emphasize this enough, is that of non-violence, ahimsa. But actually, he took us beyond that. It's very much about compassion to people. It's about karuna. It's about respect. It's about actually respecting every form of life. Anything that's living needs to be respected and not harmed at all. Yeah. So that is such a golden principle that he's given us, that if we can try and imbibe aspects of that in our, and previous colleagues referred to it as well, that how non-violence is just so important. How can we achieve that? It's very much about tolerance, and it's about forgiveness. Yeah. Of course, from generations, we've known that people have had grievances. Looking back, and even today, if we can communicate, if we can understand each other, if we can accept or learn to accept, and really kind of put our past behind, learn from it that we are doing, that it's possible to move forward by, in peaceful ways, and really through respect, draw a line to the past and move forward. So in that respect, if some of our leaders can be balanced, can have conscience, can also sort of, pursue dialogues, not take sides, and actually acknowledge those grievances and help support to reduce the suffering and move forward in peaceful way. So hoping forward for peace through forgiveness. I'm just trying to read a couple. It's very, at one level, it's very simple. It's about saying sorry. And therefore saving lives. So hoping for peace. Peace is a wonderful thing, and in Jainism and in Gujarati, it's called Shanti. It's such a lovely word. Even by reciting it, I think you can feel that inner peace. And Andrew's got the Jain tradition and our Jain temple up there showing. At Jain Center, our main Tirthankar in the center is Lord Shantinath, the 16th one, which is about peace. And so far, he's certainly served the Jain community in a very peaceful way. And it really helps us to share the non-violence tradition and the ahimsa tradition with the wider world. So let me just share a story in terms of hoping forward for peace. And also it links to the learning. Many of you may have heard it before, but it helps me to share the second principle of Jainism, that of Anekantvad. Anekantvad is about multitude viewpoints, and to respect that multi-sided viewpoints and not to be engaged in non-absolutism. Like I said, you may have heard it before, but just imagine that we have an elephant and there are different blind people trying to describe the different shape of the elephant. So one of them is talking about touching the tail, and it's saying that it's thin and long by describing it that way. Another one is touching its legs, and it's saying that it's like a pillar shape. Another one is touching the ears and the blind man, and is describing it as a flimsy and wide. And one of the other ones touching the body is saying it's kind of like a bed or a rock, and it's big and huge. Now, clearly, each one of them were right in how they were describing what they were touching. So it is that collectiveness of their description that made the whole elephant the truth, the final, the whole shape of the elephant. So similarly, each one of us has a right to have a different view, different opinion, and see the world differently from our own background, from our experiences and our own perspectives. But again, through Anekantvad principle of having that multitude of viewpoints and sharing them and respecting them, that makes that whole truth, that gives us the final perspective, as it were. So I think in that respect, if we can begin to learn some of these things and become tolerant and accept, then I think we might move forward, hopefully, with a much more peaceful world. My mom always used to say that the 5 fingers are not the same either. Every finger is different shape, a different size, but collectively, they have a great function in serving us, So if we begin to think in these ways, I think that the peace can be achieved through really being tolerant. So let me just say that currently the world's it's a wonderful world that we're living in. There's so many different traditions, and we are so enriched with different cultures. And if we can begin to really savor that, enjoy that, and really come together, connect better, then I think we can have so much more peace as well. Let me say that hope is what we all, regardless of religion and race, would want to aim for, and would want to cherish. So it's at one level, it's very simple, like I said, saying sorry, saving lives, being tolerant, can give us that hope for a safer and a superior life for all of us. And hopefully to alleviate sufferings at different levels that Richard shared with us as well, and not just the war ones. So once again, in true Jain style, Kama mi sabba jiva kamantume, mitti me sabba bhuve subera majjina kenami. I bow to all souls and all people. I have no enemies, and I have enmity with all. And that will help us to actually relinquish the animosity and hopefully progress and work towards peace, joy, and Shanti. Thank you very much.
Smita.
Thank you.
So Jewel is going to sing now the Peacemaker song. So Jewel wrote this for the Leicester Schools Peace Project.
Sand, rock, or soil, each floor has its gifts. Black, brown, or white, each color has its beauty, from the sky to the earth, from equator to the poles. With love in my heart, keep my mind full of questions.
Thank you, Jewel. So the Leicester Schools Peace Project has been going now a number of years, and I'm just going to give you a brief update. Jewel and I were involved in training of ambassadors and the construction of a video to train ambassadors at the university. These student ambassadors tell the story of the university, its founding in 1921 as the first memorial after World War I, to be a palace of peace, to be a living memorial, with a motto that they may have life, a very constructive memorial, 1921. And then the Attenboroughs were the second family that were principals at the university. And you know of David Attenborough, who is an excellent voice for Greenpeace. So we've constructed the Leicester Schools Peace Tour of the university, and then going to the War Memorial, and then going down Peace Walk. So that's a project that's ongoing. Over 700 young people have gone on the tour so far. The second big thing that's happening is that every 5 years, an agreed syllabus for religious education in state schools in Britain has to be updated. And the Leicester one has been rewritten, and it's going to have a peace strand. And Richard and Karen have been helping us with that. And the third thing that came as a complete surprise was we were invited to a conference of Catholic schools in Leicester, 5 schools, for a peace conference. And we were invited through Aslin, who is the Pax Christi Peace Education Officer. She was the keynote for the day. She spoke wonderfully. And what's amazing for me is English Martyrs Catholic School in Leicester is aligning itself with Pax Christi values. And Pax Christi is the Quaker movement inside the Catholic Church, a real force for good. So we went, we told a brief story about our son Matthew, and then we were invited to do 3 assemblies at a Loughborough Catholic school. So that's a brief update on the Leicester Schools Peace Project. And it's strategically important because if we can introduce children to the idea of peace, it's a counter-narrative to all the other things they're hearing. Jules is going to sing the chorus of this song.
Game changer, I'm a peacemaker with courage to seek new paths and direction, walking together in the vista of life, blazing a trail of peace for us all, blazing a trail of peace for us all. Yeah.
Thank you, Jules. Now it's my pleasure to introduce to you Andre. Andre is a conscientious objector, a refugee, is about 110 miles from where we are at the moment in Kansas City. He's 110 miles north, works as a youth minister for Community of Christ, but his sister and mother are in Switzerland as refugees. So Andre, please share a little bit of your story. How's your
Thank you, Andrew. Thank you, Andrew. Yeah, I'm going to be so brief. Yeah. Game changer. Thank you for this song. I just took that screenshot to share with my kids. Yeah, I mean, my kids. I serve here in Iowa State as a refugee, as a Community of Christ member for youth. Being as a youth leader is just like so many blessings to influence their life, you know, just like in a positive way, bringing their attention to the diversity we experience and how to manage that. So yeah, this is one of the greatest thing I would like to share about Community of Christ, why I love this place, this community, because it's not about mono society, it's just like about the diversity we experience there. And yeah, as Mita said, it's something wonderful, wonderful world. And it teaches us how to, you know, peacefully like embrace all of the diversity we have and how to communicate, understand, respect, and listen to each other. But I would like to tell that yesterday I shared good news with my mom. Hey, mom, Andrew Bolton, he just asked me to share some, you know, stories, our path with the community. And that was like, I didn't expect that reaction from my mom, but she said, are you going to share the catastrophe our family experienced publicly? I say, yeah, mom, it's safe. It's maybe not good for you, but it's important for people to have some of the evidences how this, you know, nonviolent way can just unite us. And especially, I said, Mom, you're in Europe right now. She's a refugee in the Switzerland, as Andrew said, and I'm here in the United States. We are just like safe. Nothing can harm us directly. So, and I thought this is like the biggest problem of all of those people who do not want to share the truth and something sacredness, which can be the cause of the peace. And my mom, she's not very vulnerable these days because she's experiencing living in a refugee camp in the Switzerland, being together with the people who do not have God in their lives, with those people who have so many gods in their lives, so different cultures, different backgrounds, and it's just a challenge for my mom, and so many prayers that she will handle that. But it is a great support from Europe, from different countries and people around. Yeah, but yeah, and actually next year, upcoming March, I'm gonna be as a 10 years refugee, and it is a catastrophe I experience in my life. It doesn't help a lot, to feel the comfort, but it really helps a lot to provide ministry toward peace, because experiencing the different cultures and different, people's opinions and wishes really helps a lot to understand how we can just be together peacefully. That was a good day, 6 March 2014. We had a great dinner together with my family, with my mom, sister. Yeah, and yeah, in the very early morning, and jets started bombing my hometown in Donbas area next to the Russian border. So they decided to occupy Crimea and Donbas as well. So we immediately just decided to leave our place and escape to safe territory on Ukraine. Yeah, but that was the beginning of the catastrophe, not my family experience, but so many Ukrainians, the whole Ukraine, so many Russian people. And I was born and has been influenced somehow by Soviet Union, like by communist ideology. And my two uncles, they spent a lot of time being together when they were kids, but on my mom's side. But my one uncle, he's a very rich, successful man who supplies Ukraine with the military guns. And another uncle, he served before in the Russian military. And you can only imagine how many conflicts our family has. And nobody can predict it that such, brothers like Ukraine and Russia potentially can have this war, but it happened, unfortunately. And so, yeah, after the war started in 2014, I decided to follow my brother. I went to Vietnam. I served there as a photographer. Then I developed the soccer in China for about 6 years. And thanks for the community of Christ again, I found somehow to serve to children there, just like to create the community there. But yeah, one day the pastor of church in China, he said, we couldn't do that anymore because we don't have a choice. We're going to be very oppressed if we continue doing church ministry here in China. So, and yeah, one day the pandemic started. Yeah, and I decided to move back to Ukraine. And my sister, she was living on occupied territory in Donbas. And me and my mom, we were together in China for a little bit, and we decided to go and visit her. So that was like right during the pandemic. And when we were crossing the border between Ukraine and occupied by Russian people, Donbass, my hometown. Ukrainian soldiers told to my mom and me, "What are you doing, guys, with your life? There is no law there. You're gonna be in danger." But I said, you know what? My sister, she's there. My home is there. I would like just to visit them just for 1 week. And that 1 week became 1 year, because after we crossed the border, all this territory became isolated because of the pandemic and because of the, I don't know, like fake government decision, just like to keep all of the people. So, and that was the evidence for me to understand why so many people couldn't live peacefully Ukraine right now, or Russian, because they don't have a choice. Some of people really don't have a choice. There is no freedom. And luckily, yeah, one day that uncle I mentioned about him, he said, "Would you like to come and serve as a sailor on my sailboat in Greece?" I said, "I live in the occupied territory. I couldn't leave that." And he said, "I have some connections. I will help you." So, and to my mom, and but that was the last time I saw my mom. I left that territory. I went to Greece. I served there, but we speak completely different language with these pro-military people. They believe in this economy, based on only money, and it doesn't help a lot. Capitalism, and I'm a vegan. I'm pro, very active animal rights person, and I knew then why my uncle invited me, just to change my mind. He said, "You have to go back to Ukraine and fight against Russian people. I'm going to supply you and your group of people. And please eat meat. It's important." And he tried his best. But those 90 days on the boat was a suffering for me. I knew that wasn't a pain for me, but that was completely difficult. But throughout the support of God, I handled that somehow. That was difficult. Then I came back in Ukraine. That was 2022. And then I was serving. That was a safe territory on Ukraine at those days, and I was serving as a soccer coach. And one very early morning, my mom, she called me, and I said, "Mom, hey, good morning. What's up?" And she said, "Oh, it's not a good morning." I said, "What's wrong?" And she said, "Russia decided to occupy the whole territory, so they invaded us." And I was shocked. I thought that was like a night firework, but that was missiles. And at that day, I was living very next to the border. I just crossed the border safely, and I found myself in Berlin, in Germany. Then the lack of German didn't help me a lot to stay there, so I just shifted myself to the United States. And yeah, being supported by Community of Christ, I just like adjusted myself to the local community. And right now, I'm so grateful to serve here. My mom, she's in Russia. Oh, she was in Russia after she has been evacuated from Donbass, and then she found her way to Europe. My sister, she has great support from Switzerland, from the European Union. But I have a beautiful evidence. So my sister's husband, he's a Muslim, and my nephew, he was very proactive. He's 15 years old boy. He was very pro-Russian person, pro-communist. This stuff, propaganda works so badly there. But living in Europe 2 years, last Monday, he reached out to me and he said, "You know what, Andre, my nephew," he said, "I'm so glad that I'm in Europe. I completely changed my opinion about this democracy, about the people who do not jealous, as he said, who support individualism, who support talents, and this is the evidence I would like to share with people, that those values which Europe has, we share as a peacemakers, needed to be spread a lot. Good things and peace building is usually very calm and I wish we can just find that vulnerability and move forward. To just to share the news that Richard said today, that the greediness of the government is like nationalism, and it is a bad thing. It doesn't help to build a peace on this earth. Which helps us to build a peace, we know. It's just like the feel that our hometown is where each person lives. It's the whole earth. And yeah, this is the ministry we do together. And I'm so grateful, Andrew, for this, community we have to share. But the idea is just how we can go beyond and spread this news as much as we can with God's support and each other's support. So yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you very much indeed, Andre. So this is a child in Gaza. And perhaps one practical thing we can do is to donate to UNICEF, who are working for the children there. So we just want to hold that up to you. It's wonderful that over 1 million people were demonstrating in London yesterday. So we're going to sing We Shall Overcome, and then we'll have a closing.
We shall
So our closing blessing is from Barbara from Germany, a Mennonite, who's also a Church and Peace member. So Barbara, over to you.
Let us pray. Dear God, creator of heaven and earth, we turn to you. We are gathered in different countries to commemorate. And we have heard and talked this evening about many situations in our world. And we bring it to you. We want commemorating wars in which our nations directly were involved, and we witness that we do not want to be involved in war again. And we heard present stories of present wars. We work for peace as we can, and we ask you for courage and wisdom and strength to do so. We want to make aware that war, fighting, and producing weapons is not the way to life. You are God of life. Jesus Christus, du hast uns den Weg gezeigt. Du bist an unserer Seite und du leidest mit uns an dieser Welt. God, we pray for those in these days who suffer and of loss of family, loss of housing, and loss of everything. We ask that you may be merciful, and we pray for those who are responsible in governments. Give sense and insight that destruction leads to suffering. And please give wisdom for peaceful decisions. Especially we think of brothers and sisters in Israel and Palestine. There is suffering and long-term harm on all sides. God, we cry out, have mercy and grant peace. In the same way, we think of Russia and Ukraine. We heard the story of Andrei, and we pray that this war will be ended and peace can grow despite of all violence and hurt. We pray for our societies. We know that part of the conflicts in this world these days is connected to our way of life. We pray that we find ways to make a difference and invite others to live in a way which take care for all creation. Even if we feel small and weak, God, you are at our side. We know and trust that you will use our witness for your kingdom of peace to come. Dear God, creator of heaven and earth, bless us and all. Help to continue the way of nonviolence and peacemaking, even though almost all seem to believe in weapons. So bless us with your love and grant us hope. Amen.
Thank you very much indeed, Barbara. So I want to thank all our presenters for sharing. I want to thank every one of you that has joined us. We touched 48 people this ceremony. So now it's time for free fellowship.